Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We're reporting out of closed session. We have one item, 4.1, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose of the Municipal Act 2001. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, one item of council reporting out of closed session this evening. The motion is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Thank you. Okay, get someone to move that. Councilor Thompson, second by Councilor Kim. Any comments? Seeing none. Mr. Clerk, call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Record vote for the only item of council reporting out of closed session this evening. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councilor Gartner? Councilor Gartner seems to be having a bit of trouble connecting. I'll see if she's there at the end. Councilor Gallo? Councilor Gallo votes yes. Councilor Kim?
Yes.
Councilor Kim votes yes. Councilor Thompson? Yes. Councilor Thompson votes yes. Councilor Gilliland?
Yes.
And Councilor Humphreys?
Yes.
Councilor Humphreys votes yes. Councilor Gartner, are you there? Don't think so. The motion would carry anyway, so motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Confirming bylaw. Someone like to move that? Councilor Gallo, Councilor Humphreys. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Gilliland, Councilor Kim. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. The time is 7:01 on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022. I'd like to call this general committee meeting to order. First, we'd like to start off by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples who presence here today still continues. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Councilor Humphrey, second by Councilor Kim. Any questions or comments on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. Community presentations, we don't have any this evening. Delegations, we have one delegation this evening. Delegation 6.1 is Suzanne Haines and Eric Acker from the Aurora Cultural Center regarding item 9.2 CMS 22-010. Aurora Town Square Governance Town Staffing Update. 1, welcome. Please state your name and be reminded of 5 minutes for your delegation. Mayor Maracas, I'm so sorry. Did you need to interject for one moment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just before we start, we all know what's going on in the globe right now. And so I just wanted to send out our thoughts and prayers to those impacted by the unjustified attack on Ukraine, and that we stand in solidarity with Aurora's Ukrainian Canadian community and all those impacted by this brutal act of war. So I just wanted to put that out there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Maracas. Apologize, Suzanne and Eric, for pre-introducing you there. By all means, if you could just state your name, you have 5 minutes for your delegation.
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. My name is Eric Acker. I'm the chair of the board, president of the Aurora Cultural Center, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the center's board of directors to confirm that our board accepts the key principles upon which the revised provision of cultural services agreement between the Aurora Cultural Center and the town of Aurora is being developed. My 2 immediate predecessors as president of the Aurora Cultural Center, Craig Mather and Bonnie Kraft, have been deeply involved, together with our executive director, Suzanne Haines, in helping to develop these principles. The combined experience of Bonnie, Craig, and Suzanne, together with the collaborative and positive cooperation that we have received from senior town staff, have resulted in this significant achievement. Our board will soon have to turn and focus on the financial consequences of Aurora Town Square and the new provision of cultural services agreement. We know that there will be both new increased operational costs and new revenues from the larger facility. Unfortunately, the increased costs will occur prior to the realization of increased revenues, and more information is needed to determine the size and the length of time of this. We will do what we can to increase our fundraising activities. Regrettably, our ability to raise funds was severely limited over the past 2 years due to our relocation from 22 Church Street, our inability to relocate to Town Hall, and all the restrictions due to the pandemic. We will increase our focus on fundraising in 2022, but we do understand that others will also be approaching possible donors. Once the PCSA and the new lease agreement are completed, we will be in position to create our 2023 budget, which will include our funding request from the town. With that, I now turn the microphone over to Suzanne Haines to complete our delegation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. As Eric mentioned, we're here to support the narrative in report CMS 22-009 relating to the update on the governance of Aurora Town Square. The general principles for our new provision of cultural services agreement between Aurora Town Council and the Aurora Cultural Center Board were brought to the board on January 12th for initial review, with a small update on February 16th for final consideration of duties for each party. The board passed a motion to support these general principles in this hybrid governance relationship. I want to thank Robin McDougall, Phil Rose, and Doug Nadarosny for their approach of the process and consideration of our operational expertise as we move through the principles of how the Aurora Town Square will operate with effectiveness and efficiency in mind. The programming working group and opening ceremonies groups continue to meet as we learn what everyone brings to the table and how to work collaboratively to meet the needs of the community. I'm also involved in consultations with Robin and her team as she alerts me to design considerations that affect operations. We've been able to consider each in turn and outline consequences of actions to the limit of my authority and expertise. In the end, we know it is the town that determines what moves forward, and we will work with how the facility is built. I see the hybrid governance model and the recent processes to build our relationship as a leadership opportunity in the arts community and industry. What has evolved is a way to take best skills available and through collective discussion and consideration, build a model that is unique and strong. We maintain our expertise in programming and delivery for the community in a model that supports effective and efficient outcomes for the community. I'm excited about the proposed programming and value the roles we each play in making the Aurora Town Square a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suzanne and Eric. Appreciate it. May I have a motion to receive and refer the comments of delegations to item 9.2? Councillor Humphreys, second by Councillor Thompson. Are there any questions or comments for the delegates tonight? Councillor Gartner.
Thank you, Suzanne and Eric. I know, and actually to Bonnie and Eric and Mr. Mather, it's I know a lot of work has gone into this, a lot of time and effort, thought. So thank you very much for coming forward, and just to say appreciate all of your work and certainly all of your work that you've done with staff. And I think staff has done a very, very good job. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And thank you as well to Suzanne and Eric for coming tonight, and appreciate your comments and relaying the comments of the board and their support of the policy in place. But also specifically, Suzanne, to your comments about, thanking staff and working collaboratively, and certainly appreciate the work that you and your board have done. I'm sure that, throughout the process, it's been important to work in collaboration with not just the town, but the library and everybody else involved. And, I'm sure at times you've had to wear not just the cultural center hat, but also the town square hat, and when what's in the best interest of Aurora as a whole, and appreciate your efforts as well. Certainly from what I've heard from staff, it's, there's obviously, lots of discussions going on, but it's been a healthy, productive discussion, and it looks like we're working our way through all of the little intricacies and details, and it's good to see everybody working collaboratively for the common good. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. And I wanted to also echo those sentiments. I have, an interesting perspective. I've sat on the Cultural Center board as a councillor, not as a councillor. I'm on the library board and sitting as a councillor. So I've had multiple perspectives on cultural services in the town. And I'm very, very happy to see all of the parties sitting at the table and collaborating and coming up with a resolution to this. So yeah, I think it's a good news story, and I miss you too, and I hope I can see you guys soon.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gallo. Any other questions or comments? No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Suzanne and Eric. I really appreciate all the work you've been doing over the last couple of years. I know I'm sitting on the board as well, and I see all the hard work that you guys are doing and the collaboration with the town. It really doesn't go unnoticed. I know that what you guys have had to deal with, all the changes and the rules and everything, has been really tough to keep up, but you guys seem to keep on coming through, and I'm really glad you support the policy that we have in front of us today, and only good things can come from this. So thanks so much. All right, so I'm going to, I guess, refer the comments of the delegation item 9.2. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Consent agenda. We don't have any items tonight. Advisory committee meeting minutes. May I have a motion to receive the advisory committee meeting minutes of items 8.1 to 8.3? Anybody? Councillor Gallo, second by Councillor Thompson. Any questions or comments on any of these items? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carries. Items for consideration and discussion. 9.1 CMS 22-009 Aurora Town Square status update, agreements and IT services. Can I get a motion to put that on the floor? Councillor Humphreys, second by Councillor Kim. Any questions or comments? Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. Thank you for the good report, staff. I just have a question. It's on page 4, and it's about the reading garden. So I guess through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. McDougall, the reading garden, is that, I thought that was just to be a public space, but there's mention here of permitting it out. How would that work? Would that be after library hours, or? Thank you.
Ms. McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, and I believe Mr. Rose should be online as well to support some questioning today, but I can help you with this one. The reading garden is obviously on the second floor between the 2 additional meeting rooms. It has its own separate entrance. It is envisioned that at times there may be a desire to have a separate gathering in that space. And so we would be looking at that as an opportunity. We see it more so as a casual gathering area, but there may be an opportunity for a party, a group that wishes to have it exclusive to their space. So we wanted to generate an opportunity there where it could be rented out if the opportunity presented itself.
Thank you. And of course, we want to generate any revenue opportunities possible. When it's not being permitted out, is it just a room that's open to the public to go in and out? And then if it was permitted, there would be a signage that something was happening inside that, not allowing the public to come in?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, that is correct. It is and would be signed accordingly if somebody had rented it out for exclusive party. Otherwise, it would be generally open to the public. Councillor?
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through to Mr. Rose. Certainly, we heard from the Cultural Center this evening, just with regards more specifically to 9.2, but just in general with regards to this process. But we didn't have a representative from the library this evening. So I just a simple question with regards to the library, their board sort of reaction to really all of the reports on tonight, but we'll just start with 9.1. Are they comfortable with the provisions that are in this report with regards to the sharing of the Magna and Lebovic rooms?
Mr. Rose?
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Thompson. We've had lots of conversations, just like we have had with Ms. Haines and the board of the Cultural Center. We've had lots of conversations with Bruce, the CEO of the library. And of course, he's had some higher level conversations with our CAO and his board. But in those conversations, yes, we've come up with general consensus that the allocation of both the Magna and the Lebovic room for 2022 meet their needs for this year. One of the reports also does mention that we are working on a specific memorandum of understanding that will guide space allocation and usage specifically for the library going forward from January 2023. Well, actually from January 2023 to the end of 2023, and then likely the space usage policy, which is also mentioned in one of the reports tonight, will take over, and the hours that have been allocated to the library will be grandfathered in at that point. But the short answer is yes. We've had great conversations. Collaborative nature of those conversations have been, very welcome, and we've made a lot of progress in the conversations with the library, just as we have had with the Cultural Center.
Councillor Thompson?
Wonderful. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, item 9.2, CMS 22-010, Aurora Town Square Governance Town Staffing Update 1. We're to receive this report, and that the conversion of the manager of Aurora Town Square contract position to a permanent position to be funded from the Aurora Town Square operating budget be approved. And 3, that the conversion of the marketing creative specialist contract position to a permanent position be funded from the Aurora Town Square operating budget also be approved. May I have someone put a motion on the floor? Mover, Councillor Humphrey, second by Councillor Kim. Any comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. I just, in going through this process, will we be, from an HR perspective, going, and I mean no disrespect to anyone who's currently in those positions, but I'm trying to be as gentle as possible in my comments. Will we be going out to look for candidates for those positions, or are we taking the 2 that are in those positions and simply converting them, and they will be transitioning from a contract to a full-time employee? Through you, Madam Chair.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, I can confirm that the positions will be posted, and there will be a competitive process for both positions. So if the current candidates wish to apply, they could go through the process for a competitive application.
Perfect, and I think that's the correct approach from a very interesting, or I think an obvious perspective, that when we post these things as a contract position, we may be eliminating a certain bunch of people that might be qualified but are looking for a full-time position. So if in that case we did quite well in the contract positions that we filled, but when we're transitioning, and I'm glad to hear that it's just not a simple transition, not that I have an issue with, again, the individuals, but the process, that there may be many people out there who now would be interested because it's a full-time position as opposed to a contract. So I'm glad we're moving in that direction. That was it.
Councillor Thompson. And Councillor, if you don't mind speaking up, for some reason it sounds a little
Sure, that's
further
fine.
away.
Just wanted to share some comments I had with Ms. McDougall prior to the meeting, just with respect to these two positions and some additional information that I was looking for. If this was budget time, whenever we deal with positions, be it contract to full-time or new positions, we typically get a budget sheet, which again indicates the financial implications. I didn't see this in this report, and I've asked Ms. McDougall if she could provide that at least before the council meeting at the end of the month. Obviously, as we know, anytime you go from a contract position to a full-time position where the salary may stay the same, it's not necessarily true of the benefits and the whole package. And so there is a financial implication, and I think that's important information for council to have. And secondly, I just wanted to clarify the reporting relationship, because while I understand that the position really is focused on town square, I've always been of the belief that communications should house everybody. It should be under one roof. There should be no silos. And so in my conversations with Ms. McDougall, she did say that the plan, of course, is for this person ultimately, while they'll have a dotted line connection to the manager of Aurora Town Square, ultimately they fall under communications and our new director. And so, for me, I think that's important, because I think we've always need to have a consistent approach when it comes to communication. So just thought I would share that information based on my conversations with Ms. McDougall.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thompson. Any other comments or questions on this item? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. Sorry, I did have just some other comments as far as just some clarification, and I may ask for more offline before a council meeting, but the first position, manager of Aurora Town Square, is that role, because some of the duties that are there, in my eyes at least, are kind of one-offs. We're going to accomplish them and then they're gone because we're developing a new facility. But one of the big ones was, I guess, that person will be responsible for the archives and sort of fulfilling a role that's currently vacant. And I just want to verify that that's the case.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, there has been the vacancy. That has been part of our consideration in the restructuring of the Museum and Archives division, and subsequently the managerial duties would be coming to this new manager position. So I'm trying to streamline the number of management roles, and subsequently the management duties would be coming to this position. Obviously, they're in that site. It makes sense to me to oversee that area of the responsibilities, as well as expand, as noted in the report, not only Town Square as an entity, but the cultural services provisions. So subsequently, overseeing the cultural partners relationships, the development of our cultural partners in the community, and overseeing the development of the implementation of our cultural master plan and public art master plans as additional initiatives. So it's a much larger scope than just a building, and subsequently putting bums and seats in that center. We want to broaden what that role would entail.
Councilor? Thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, the second position, I just want to get a sense of, have we explored within, because a lot of it, what they're doing is communications, and we have a communications department. Have we explored the need for that position, taking into account our current, I guess, employees, and can any of the current staff fulfill those? Because some of them are, again, the setup of a new facility, and then kind of those tasks go away, and then there's day-to-day stuff, like designing a website and those kind of things. Have we looked at internally to be able to fulfill that position? I'm just I want to be able to hang my hat on the need. And again, I get that it's a brand new facility and there's so many unknowns, and we just don't know. Is there value in keeping a contract? I just have some question marks in terms of the need for that position.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, we had those conversations, certainly including since our new manager of communications came on board, just to vet the opportunity of coordinated effort within the communications team with her support, and obviously taking into consideration the size of this new asset, the revenue generating expectations, and understanding the added responsibility to what her team already has on their plate. Subsequently, it was also with her understanding and support that it would be an FTE going forward, that she would see a responsibility and a need. That being said, she does see if it's within corporate communications, obviously reporting to them enables that flexibility of where the resource skill sets may come from. You know, they have a website specialist that could assist, but ultimately what she's looking at doing is assigning a corporate communications specialist to that center. So there will be their primary duties, but ultimately there's additional resources that they can share within. So if they have a media launch or a media support, we have other staff within communications that can support it. But ultimately the skill sets are beyond our current offerings, in her opinion. I'm just reading some of her notes, so I'm looking down. But to generate support and interest, there is obviously a need for a microsite required that has to be developed and managed and maintained. Ongoing marketing and communications regarding upcoming events, ticket sales, and promotions for the initiatives that come through the door, as well as just over time, we see the growth of this center continuing to grow. So it's certainly not going to go backwards and get less busy. We want it to get busier. So she doesn't see a need where it's going to take a pause at all. It's just going to continue to evolve. But her understanding too is that it would be a requirement of an FTE from when we start. But we would be revamping, as noted in the report, and the existing position to suit the go forward need versus the existing during construction, the rebranding, the getting the logo revised, that kind of thing. So it definitely would change in the promotion of the new position. Councillor?
Okay, I'm going to have to wrap my head around, I guess, a new concept, because this facility isn't like our other facilities. Not only do we have other partners, the library and the cultural center, that will be doing their own thing. I guess what I'm hearing is the town will have very specific programming for that space, notwithstanding the fact that we have excellent staff already that do community events. So I'm going to have to wrap my head around how efficient is it to isolate this space. And, you know, at the same time, we have staff that do events across the whole town and are responsible for events across the whole town. So between now and, I guess, council, I'll try to better understand that.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, and I am okay with, with the recommendations are here. And I know that it will evolve and change as we get into the day-to-day roles and so on. But the one thing I'm missing, and it could be just because it's going to be evolved, is it's outside of here almost. And I wonder if this is going to come later, but how are we going to build the business of the town square, including like attracting what we want to see in event space, right? Do we have that integrated, not in these roles, maybe somewhere else, or just wondering if you don't mind? Yeah.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, it is in part both roles. Obviously, the evolution of the business plan and marketing of this site and creating and generating an attraction, a tourist site, a business opportunity, bringing businesses in, that's partly the manager's role to oversee and create that expectation. But certainly the marketing role will be responsible for that outreach to make sure that there is that connection with the economic community and our cultural partners that are out there, to engage with them as well. So it's part and parcel. Both roles will have an engagement responsibility.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, through Madam Chair. And I guess this sounds like that. It's like an evolution. And because I've heard of some great ideas in the community with some of our existing cultural partners, including things of, almost like you have a TIFF North, you can have Stratford Festival north, all these different things, right? That you could potentially reach out and partner. So those are the types of things that I think we can reaching out to the citizens or any cultural partners, because this space for me is going to be something I think our vision is very different and hopefully the place to go. And I know it will be. While we're developing these roles, we should be thinking about the business plan and get that type of things happening, which I'm sure they are. But thanks, that's good.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. Following on the last two councillors' comments, with respect to what Councillor Gallo said, I think we have now a really good communications department. Is there no capacity within that department and our new manager to take this on, at least initially, until we see how much work is required?
Ms. McDougall.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. That's in part why we're asking for the flexibility of the ability to convert, but we would implement and post at the right time. We do have a contracted role in place now. However, in consultation with the manager of communications, we need to see where the pressures are, timing wise, marketing wise, when the doors open, ultimately when we need to make sure that we've got rentals and things booked and permitted in advance. And that comes back to a real push for marketing at a certain time, and then subsequently the ongoing effort. I'm not sure, I could not speak for a manager of communications about the workload that this will require and whether or not her team could take that on. It's quite significant, in my opinion, to expect her to assign an existing staff member. It's also noted that we have a lot of existing initiatives and events that the staff are definitely busy doing. This center is definitely going to bring on a lot of new things, a lot of which the town are responsible for. Yes, our partners will be offering different initiatives within, and as noted previously by Councillor Gallo, that they have their own marketing for those efforts. But this is a center where it's also to our benefit to help with their marketing efforts, to help spread their word, but we will also be responsible to fulfill those other vacancies not in use, to rent and book shows, book performances, or book businesses or events that come to that center. So it's a lot broader than just a random event that needs marketing. It definitely has a much bigger scale of responsibility.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. I'm going to leave it for now, except just to say that I can't see this as a full-time position in the beginning. My second comment is following Councillor Humphreys. A couple of years ago, we had kind of a business plan presented by the consultant, but we've never had a real business plan. So is that going to be forthcoming?
Ms. McDougall.
Through Madam Chair, that definitely is something we've been continuing to work on. And as with every report that comes back to council seeking direction to refine the service level agreement, who's doing what level of service, what are our hours of operation, what is our allocation policy, what's rentable versus what is part of our partner's use. All of those will feed into the revenue projections, the revenue potential, and each one of these decisions under the service level agreement as to particularly around the hybrid model of which organization is going to be responsible for that task. With these reports coming forward, that will help us finalize some of those, I'll call it loose ends in finishing a business plan and updating that for council. Definitely have an intention to bring an update back to you, but we need these and some of the future reports to be finalized to give us a chance to put those details back into an updated business plan, but it is coming.
Councillor.
Thank you. And as we're through you, Madam Chair, as we're, responsible, we are responsible for the taxpayers' money. And I think we should have an idea of what we're going to bring in before we decide what we're going to spend. And I know it's circular, but we need to figure these things out. We need to figure them out before, certainly the first part of the process needs to be done before we open. And then there needs to be an update, maybe a year or a year and a half into the opening. So I look forward to that business plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, I only have one, and that's that I do feel that both of these positions are important, and I know that I did have a conversation with Ms. McDougall and did find out that the roles had changed and there was some additions and maybe some omissions. Hence why we are going back to market for these positions as well, because the roles and responsibilities are a lot more. And I'd express that especially the marketing position that we're speaking of is crucial at this point, in my opinion. If we are planning on opening sometime soon, I think we got to have our ducks in a row and have our plan in place to have a successful opening and move forward. So I'm happy with what we have before us today, and I'm going to support that. If there's no other comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, here we are, 9.3, Aurora Town Square status update, space usage and room permitting policy. That's CMS 22-013, that report be received, and that the principles of the Aurora Town Square space usage and room permitting policy be approved. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor? Councillor Kim, Councillor Humphreys. Any questions or comments? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I just need a minute to get to my agenda. I'm looking on page 3.
And room permit.
So with the just before the very end of the report, it's got the progression of who gets to use the space. We've got Aurora-based not-for-profits, and then we have the district school boards. So I'd like to know, through you, Madam Chair, where we are on the school board list of priority.
Ms. McDougall?
Sorry, through Madam Chair, if I may clarify, are you asking if we were to rent the schools?
No, I guess thank you. I wasn't clear. What I'm trying to say is that I've never seen the school boards in a ranking of use of our space. And so this is the first time I've seen it. And I'm wondering, what kind of courtesy the boards give the Town of Aurora if we want to use their space.
Ms. McDougall?
Through Madam Chair, if Mr. Rose is back on, I know he consulted with our manager business support on the other allocation policies that we have, and he framed this one similarly regarding the rank of allocation. If I may, I would like to get him to comment on where the schools, and if the schools are on those two policies. So
thank you.
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Madam Chair. So yes, they are. So districts, so the allocation priority order that is currently in our spaces usage policy for Aurora Town Square, as Ms. McDougall said, is based on ice allocation, a sport field allocation, as well as the room permitting allocation that is administered by the Business Support Services Division. And so this priority order, save and except for the cultural partners and the cultural center and library, is the mirror image of those two policies. So to answer your question, Ms. McDougall, yes, the district school boards are in the other three policies that I mentioned. And this is basically the same order. And to Councillor Gardner's point, I can certainly follow up, but I do not have an answer on where we fall within the priority order for the school boards, but I can certainly follow up and respond later.
Thank you. And I don't know if Mr. Downey's with us at this meeting, but I'm not going to ask him to comment. But, through my experience, the school boards haven't always been that kind to us. And so I just like to make sure that, that we are one of their priorities if we want to use their facilities. That's a comment, Mr. Rose. I don't think you can speak to that at the moment, but I have the history, and as I said, we've struggled with the school boards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just a quick note on that discussion, that the list that's there, that's only there in terms of whenever there is conflict. So if whatever, an Aurora-based commercial group books something, the school board can't go and say, no, we want that, and then we give it to the school board. It's only where there's conflicts. I don't know about grandfathering with brand new facilities, maybe the existing rooms. Not quite sure what grandfathering there is on any of those rooms, but is that, through you, Madam Chair, my understanding?
Ms. McDougall.
Thank you. Actually, the rank here has to do with how the space is allocated. So if we have two conflicting requests, one is commercial, one's a nonprofit, it'll go to the nonprofit. So I hope that answers your question. Firstly, so the commercial doesn't get priority. It would only be if there is a conflict. We want to make sure that ultimately that the local organizations and nonprofits particularly are supported first. Sorry, if you had a second question, I missed it.
That does answer my question and my understanding of what the list is there for, but also in terms of grandfathering. Are there any grandfathering agreements currently that would have been linked to any of the spaces in either the cultural center or the library?
Ms. McDougall.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, we are working with the two organizations, in particular the library and the cultural center, and we are expecting that a grandfathering policy would apply. So if they had a particular space in history to use, then we would be looking at that as an opportunity to consider, unless there's a different pressure point that we have to balance, and we might have to fall to this list to deal with a conflict. But ultimately, the grandfathering understanding is there, and we would be working with the organizations to ensure they get what they need. Not exceed necessarily, but get what they've been looking for. I hope that's helpful.
Councillor?
Okay, do we know of any specific user groups that would fall into the category of grandfathering?
Ms. McDougall?
Certainly, through Madam Chair, for an example, the cultural center, if they had in the past used Brevic Hall or the red or green or blue galleries as their original dedicated space, we'd be looking at offering that to them unless there's another pressure or a need for that space. So yes, they'd be honored if that's what they've been using in the past.
Councillor Gallo?
Okay, that's fine. That's fine for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gallo. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. Through to Ms. McDougall. Ms. McDougall, the motion in front of us asks us to approve the principles of the policy, but when I read on page 3, it talks about, the policy identifying which staff are responsible for the various functions, and it speaks to specifying submission deadlines and grandfathering rights. I get the sense that the policy has already been written. Can you just clarify whether the policy is complete or not?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, and the policy has been drafted based on just general principles, again, trying to look at what we've had in place previously. So we've drafted one, but until we were comfortable or understanding that council was comfortable with the principles, we haven't finalized it. So there is a bare bones of it, but there's still work to be done, because ultimately we needed to know that today's report was the direction council was comfortable with us going. So there is one ready, it's on the works, it just needs some tweaking after tonight.
Thank you. Then as a follow-up through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. McDougall, then my assumption then is that if council approves the principles tonight, at some point, the full policy will come before council for approval. Is that correct?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Madam Chair, technically, our CAO has delegated authority to approve the policies. So we would have typically not brought one to council in this way. That's why we're looking for councils to approve the principles. However, if the council chooses differently in this particular case, we'd be fine bringing that to council if they wish to have a look at it and ultimately approve the policy.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. I'll speak for myself, is that I think, over the years, it's been the habit of council to approve policies. We see them regularly. I can think of the ice allocation policy. I can think of the pool allocation policy. They've all come before council. We've approved it. We've often talked about the fact that it's council's responsibility to implement, develop, approve policies. It's staff that drive it, the direction out of those policies. My preference would be, although we're approving the principles and tonight, I would like to see the final draft of the policy myself.
Absolutely.
Councillor Thompson, are you wanting to add an amendment or something or other
I'll wait
to
to see what
the?
the comments around the table are. If there's general consensus, happy to put that amendment forward. Yes.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gartner.
I'm not sure. I would like to second that amendment. Is that what Councillor is looking for, or?
I don't think Councillor Thompson put the item on the floor, the amendment on the
I
floor.
agree.
yet.
I understand that. My comment is, I think we need to see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think that's an excellent suggestion. In fact, I think that's what I was kind of getting at earlier. There's going to be some changes, some, just some different perspectives. And I think it'd be a great idea for us to get it back. Just have an idea, ensure that, the policy that's being set out is something that this council's envisioned. So it kind of all goes hand in hand. It's very tied together. So I agree with that. And if Councillor Thompson wants to make that motion, don't know if anyone else wants to speak to it. I think it's a good idea for it to come back and have us look at it before it goes into effect.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Kim.
Prior, and it's always good for council to review the policies because that's been the habit in the past. My only concern was that if it's going to be a 100-page policy, just like budget, we had FAC go over some of the budget so that it's not going to be a huge line-by-line item every year, and we developed financial principles or budget principles to get away from going line by line as well. And so that's what I was kind of grappling with when I was talking to Ms. McDougall. And so through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. McDougall, are we anticipating something along the lines of 20, 30 pages or not? And I don't say this because I don't want to read a huge novel, but
Elizabeth?
at the same time, we don't want to have a 12-hour meeting going through every single line on a 100-page document. So I don't foresee this being a lengthy policy document. So can you kind of help elaborate?
Ms. McDougall.
Certainly through Madam Chair. No, we don't anticipate it being lengthy either. Right now, we are just discerning what would be deemed part of the policy versus part of procedures. And ultimately, procedures are more administrative, how it's being implemented. We just want to make sure that the language in the policy as we draft it is clear on specific principles, on the policy's direction more clearly. And so, no, I do not anticipate the policy specifically will be very long.
Thank you. And I think to err on the side of caution would be for us to receive the policy. So I'd be fine with seeing it. And because this is an important policy document for the biggest project the town has seen. So I think it's reasonable for us to receive that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. Councillor Thompson.
I'll put forth the amendment that the final draft of the Aurora Town Square space usage and room permitting policy be brought to council for approval.
Do I have a seconder? Is that Councillor Gertner? Any speakers to the amendment only? Seeing none. No further questions. I'll call the vote to the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Final draft, and you said final. Okay. We'll make sure that that is stipulated. Final draft. Correct. Okay, all right. So back to the main motion as amended. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a timeline. Do we know when we'd be expecting it back through you?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe we're fairly close. So certainly if we get a sense of where council is on these principles, I would anticipate, as long as it fits within the clerk and our schedule for council reports, I could see an April return.
Councillor Gallo? Okay. No other questions or comments? Great. All right, well, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. On to item number 9.4, which is the CMS 22-014 Aurora Town Square status update capital campaign. There are 3 recommendations, 1 to be received, 2 that the Aurora Town Square Bridge, Outdoor Square, and Church Street Schoolhouse be approved as a name sale opportunity, and that staff be directed to initiate negotiations with potential partners for the purpose of naming the Aurora Town Square Bridge, Outdoor Square Space, and the Church Street Schoolhouse. May I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Kim. Any questions or comments on this item? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with staff exploring this opportunity and coming back to us, but I just want to make it clear that my expectation that it is all still subject to approval. So I guess through you to Mr. Rose, Phil, was it always the intention that once these conversations were had, that you would come back to council with, be it closed or open session report, speaking to what the potential opportunity is, the group, the donation, et cetera, and seek council's approval? Because it's not clear from this report whether or not that was the intention, or if we gave you the green light tonight, you would go forth with it.
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Thompson. Yes, that's our intention. So for the 3 items that we've identified as name sale opportunities in the report, which is the bridge, the square, and the Church Street School, including the new addition. Once we've had the opportunity to negotiate with prospective donors and come up with an agreement that we believe is a benefit for both of us, we would return to council, likely as a closed session report, and seek final approval for those name sale opportunities and the corresponding donations that go with them.
Councillor?
Thank you. Although it's implied, I'd like to put forth an amendment that the staff will report back with their findings subject to final approval.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, anybody want to second that? Mayor Maracus? All right, is any questions or comments to the amendment only? Councillor Humphries, is that to the main motion or is that to the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Back to the main motion, amended motion. Councillor Humphries.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. In just reading, the report and the goal, I think is very good. But just want to ask you, Madam Chair, who's going to be working on this? Do we have staff that are understand fundraising and fundraising, that sort of skill base? And the reason I ask this is that even being on the Hillary House board as the liaison, that they're thinking about looking for outsourcing consultation for professional fundraising, because there is a real different, depending on the strategy and the way you want to obtain these types of fundraising goals. How do we get there? How do we do it? It's a great plan. I see a great plan in front of us, but who, what, may I ask you to? Not sure.
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have engaged and have a consultant on contract. Council may recall Intercom Inc. Is the professional consulting firm that we have retained for this leadership of the project, and subsequently they have been taking the leadership role in all of the conversations, in addition to support and on-site walking tours. We've had, fortunately, the mayor has been available to have those conversations as well. And Phil as a staff member is there in support relating to more of the groundwork and coordination efforts that are on board, but certainly as a professional organization, Intercom has significant experience and success at their fundraising initiatives that they had for other facilities and complexes. And to us, we feel they've achieved and in some areas exceeded where they should be at this point.
Great. Good. Thank you.
Councillor Humphreys?
Thank you.
Councillor, oh, I'm not so sure who was next. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just along those lines, in the report, it speaks to, it says to date, of the possible 155 donor prospects, the campaign has targeted a small group of high net worth individuals to secure major gifts first, which will be followed by a community campaign later in the year. And I realize this report and what you're asking is mainly, naming rights and trying to do that, but it also speaks to, everything we've done so far. How have we done so far? It doesn't speak to how well we're doing or what stage we are. Have we gotten anyone to say, yes, here's $500,000 or?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair. At this stage, that we have definitely had some solid leads and very solid ones, letters of intent kind of agreements, but we're cautious at this point in an open session. We still have to work through some of the details behind it, which we can do and bring to council in a closed session report, but it's not, at this point, it would be comfortable for me to share that in an open session.
So I guess that leads me to the next question. Is that coming at any time soon that you'll be recommending that we go and have those discussions? Because it's, time is of the essence and we're around the corner. So I think most of us will probably want to know what stage we're at.
Ms. McDougall?
Thank you, through Madam Chair. That is our very next step. Ultimately, we need council's direction and approval based on this recommendation that we can obtain names for these. Part of our policy is to get council's approval that we can pursue those and get names for these particular assets. Once we get that approval, we can formalize those negotiations and bring those in closed session to you. So it should be a very short order turnaround.
So those approvals, most likely you'll get by the end of this month. So should we expect something in April?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, if not a bit before, I would imagine we could do that sooner than later. As long as we get a sense of where council's going with this report, that you get we could be bringing something for at least an update to council even before April if need be.
We'd approve this at the end of this month.
Correct.
And then, okay. As long as it's imminent.
It's imminent, yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have some concerns with this. The Church Street School is the Church Street School and is one of our foremost heritage sites. I don't think we should be selling naming rights to that. Ms. McDougall, would you like to respond?
Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair, we certainly can see where you're coming from. We have shared the list in a previous closed session report to council with the idea of that being an opportunity. And we were as staff of the understanding that that is a possibility. That being said, the 22 Church Street School proper out front, ultimately, we can certainly preserve the nature of that site and from a naming opportunity could be more honed in on the addition segment of 22 Church Street. Something we could work on as far if that was council's desire.
Councillor?
Follow up through you. Are you talking about the atrium?
Ms. McDougall?
Through Madam Chair, not just the atrium, the entire addition, the 29,000 or no, 32,000 square feet addition.
Councillor?
Okay. I'm having a lot of difficulty with this. This is the Aurora Town Square. And the Aurora Town Square, of course, it's the buildings, but I think the public is going to associate the open space. I really can't see selling the naming rights to that. With respect to the bridge, again, that's right up front and center. in our Aurora Town Square. So that would depend on, the size of the lettering and where it was going to be placed on the building. But I know we would like to have the money. But on the other hand, I don't want to sell any naming rights that are going to diminish the identity as the Aurora Town Square. And I mean, I just don't agree with this at all. Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I don't agree with this at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gardner, are you wanting to separate the Church Street Schoolhouse from this resolution here, or is you not agreeing with the entire naming rights policy?
I'm going to be voting against the policy, and I don't, the Church Street School, through you to Ms. McDougall, or just as a comment. I mean, the Church Street School is the Church Street School. It's a building. So, if you're talking about naming rights to the addition, that's not the Church Street School. And I thought we would be selling more naming rights to the interior of that addition. So I'm a little surprised. Maybe I missed the report. Maybe I didn't read it correctly, but I think this is just improper, what we're trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Any other comments or questions? No? Okay, I have a couple. I know you and I had spoke earlier, Ms. McDougall, and I had a couple questions that, obviously I don't want this to be leading the closed session, but I would like to have a conversation in closed session further about the negotiations. And I just really want to make clear for me, who is doing the negotiating? Is this staff doing the negotiation? Is this the intercom consultants doing the negotiation? I'm really trying to understand what we're approving tonight, moving forward with these naming rights. Ms. McDougall?
Through you or to you, Madam Chair. Certainly the negotiations at this point, just more is in conversation through hard hat tours with the different opportunities and potential donors that come through. The conversation is often led by either Intercom, Martin Vanzon from Intercom, and or Phil and or the mayor as far as conversations go. There's often subsequent conversations that may be had just in conversation with the mayor and or Intercom. So it certainly is on a professional basis and about what their interest might be, trying to understand what level or threshold they'd be interested in contributing. What would their in return be? Did they want it to be a naming right? Is it a straight donation? Are they interested in supporting a particular program? Is it what is the term? Some of it's negotiation around the length of the term. So it's wide ranging depending on the interest of the potential donor, and having that flexibility can enable us to be creative on that opportunity. And ultimately, we're coming back to council for your endorsement in the end. But to be specific, the negotiations at this stage come from Intercom, the mayor. Phil might have some supplementary conversations, but it's more about content, the site, what we can deliver in the site. That's really where we are with the negotiations. Who is part of it? It's those, particularly the three entities that have been involved to date.
Thank you. And I guess I'm just really trying to understand the rules of engagement with this partnership that we're trying to, I guess, form with other corporations. And from my understanding, Intercom was more of a philanthropic business model. And with the naming rights, I've been supportive at the naming rights and more of a reoccurring revenue. I think that would be kind of like the best business model on such a significant building. And I don't really understand with what's before us if that is the kind of model that we're negotiating, or if there's a model we're negotiating when this does come back to council and it is in closed session. are these models being discussed and or are these decisions being made arbitrarily between now and when it does come to closed session? Because I feel that council should have some sort of input in deciding what would be the best course of action moving forward on what that monetary revenue would look like to the best interest of the town and the taxpayers.
To you, Madam Chair, if I may, the summary or the pursuit of what the negotiations have been based on to date have been based on the principles and the parameters that have been shared with council in the closed session 2 reports previously, with regards to the potential list of who our potential contacts would be, and also the potential evaluation of the sites and the dollar values based on what we'd be pursuing. So that has been communicated to council, and it's been based on those, the basis of that has guided the conversations to date and the negotiations to date. With regards to the type and is it an ongoing, I think to be honest, most of the conversations would be about either a one-time contribution of a significant value that could, in how we manage it, be an annual support for the site and how it's managed through the financials, and or it's a contribution that we would see collected over a period of time. But that depends on the contributor, what their comfort level is, what they're able to do. And in some cases, some are prepared to do a one-time check and some are not. And I think it comes down to an individual negotiation of each potential, not just philanthropic, but also corporate. And those have also come through the door and part of our hard hat tours.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. And I guess where my concern is, I feel like, we're kind of leaving an open door as to whether we want it to be philanthropic or whether we want it to be reoccurring revenue. And we haven't really stipulated what those rules of engagement are. And, having that council discussion to decide whether or not a reoccurring revenue would be a model that we'd want to seek or not. I just think that was something we need to define. Throwing it out there and having a one-time check and then that's that. Is that if it's for 5 years or for indefinitely and indefinitely versus 5 years. Are we holding out on additional revenue moving forward, an opportunity? And what I'm understanding is that the decisions that are being made within that negotiation is between Intercom and the mayor and staff. Or is this something that's coming to us to have that negotiation prior? I just feel like these decisions of negotiation are going to be made and then presented to the council, how whatever sponsor wants to come forward with kind of like an open door policy without even understanding what the policy is. We do have a naming policy, and I did look it over and I did read it, and it was kind of vague and it was kind of all over the place because we didn't really have anything specific to a monumental building such as Aurora Town Square, because it is very unique and what we're trying to fundraise for and the naming rights. It's not the same comparator as naming a change room. It's much different, and the delegated authority of assessments is pretty vague. So am I to understand that what we're approving tonight with directing staff to negotiate is allowing them to make that decision before it comes to council, the business model that has been negotiated within whoever that might be? Is that the point in time it's going to come to council when that decision's been made? Ms. McDougall?
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, the staff have been acting on the direction that we left with through the closed session reports on the evaluations of the different assets, the dollar amount we were to try to pursue and obtain. There, in those reports at that time, there wasn't a specific concern noted about how those funds were to be obtained. There was like noted in this report, there was an ultimate goal of $5 million. How those were broken out into naming rights was shared within closed session, evaluations per space. There was not specifics about what was the term, was it reoccurring, was it to support program, or was it just to simply go towards capital? The idea has been, even in those report back then, as noted in here, the goal is to be flexible with the contributor. ultimately trying to negotiate the best win-win scenario for the town. Ultimately, as well, trying to achieve what we've set for ourselves as a goal. How we achieve it was, our staff's understanding was meeting the requirements that council sort of supported in those closed session reports. So we didn't feel like we were doing anything adverse to what council had already told us. So we feel like we're on that path of what we understood, and that the flexibility was a good thing, because each conversation can be very different, and to have to bring it back every single conversation can be very difficult and time consuming depending on the contributor.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. I appreciate what you're saying and the direction that you're going, and we want to keep options open. I get that. I guess for me, I wanted to kind of have a consensus around council and that feeling of, what direction did we want to go with especially naming of a large building like that. I would think I would want to hear from council and have that conversation to say, this is the kind of business model or the model that we would like to approach. So let's promote that within, the corporate sponsors or the corporate partners or whoever we're trying to, get that reoccurring revenue. Is that the model that we want to broach, as opposed to like knocking a door saying, well, what is it that you want to do? And I just feel like we never really had that conversation. Maybe I assumed we'd have that conversation after we agreed we wanted to do naming rights. I'm supportive of that, but it's just understanding what business model we want to go through and support. And if someone wants to come in and do a one-time contribution that we can't say no, it's not like I'm against that, but it's just understanding what we're actually trying to achieve as far as a business model. Because Intercom was more philanthropic, it just didn't really go in line with the way I understood that they were going to promote that. Because I would be in support of terms and reoccurring revenue versus the one-time donation, unless it's, too good to be true. Sure, sign the check. But that's what I want to make clear. So as far as number 3, I'm in support of the naming, but I'm just a little confused as the negotiation type. And I would just like to make that separated. I just for the principle of my belief of that business model moving forward. I have a feeling it'll probably be passed anyway, but that's kind of how I would want to go about moving along tonight. Any other comments or questions? Nope, seeing none. Mr. Clerk, I just want to separate the third. So if I can get a vote on item 1 and 2 and 4 as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And item 9.4 and 3, the third recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, on to item 9.5. This is the PDS 22-012 Heritage Permit Application File HPA-2021-16, which is 82 Center Street. May I have a motion to put the item on the floor for discussion? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson. Any comments or questions? Someone's got to put it up. Councillor Humphreys, and we'll change that to, since everybody's so engaged, Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Gartner. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, 9.6 PDS 22-036 Regional Official Plan Update Review. That report we received, and that staff be directed to work with York Region staff to consider a substantial transit stop hub within the promenade on Yonge Street, considering the proximity to Town Park and the significant investments made at Aurora Town Square within the heart of the town. May I have a mover and a seconder? Hands high. Councillor Gallo, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Kim. Any comments or questions to this? Councillor Gallo.
Can someone just help me understand, first off, where did this come from? And how much detail in approving this does this mean we're going to have a thorough understanding of what the impact of this stop or hub is going to have on Yonge Street? And, you know, I want to better understand, first off, how it started and what the process is going to be, because I just get the feeling it's going to be pretty significant.
Ms. House.
Hi, good evening, and through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. Where this came from was really just an update for council on the region's MCR process and where the town's OPR process fits in it. So our official plan review. And we have through the remainder of March to provide any comments to the region regarding their MCR process. This was initially just an information on the timing and where we fit into that. In regards to the hub or the transit, we brought this forward to really raise the awareness for the region that in the future we would be looking for something within the promenade area, not necessarily right in the historic area, although that's kind of implied through the wording in this, but it would be somewhere in the promenade based on the growth of the town and where growth is identified. The process right now is to, again, just make sure the region is aware and that it's part of their plans going forward, that they keep that in mind as we move forward. Both the regional and the town's official plan review are looking forward out quite a few years. So this is just, again, to have that on the radar and not necessarily something that would come forward very soon.
Councillor.
Okay, I mean, I have no issues with having, you know, discussions, but when I hear substantial transit stop hub, it just, to me, I take a step back and I say, okay, do we really need this? And if we do need it, what is the impact? What's the whole parameters around it? And maybe what are the next steps? Let's say we move forward with this. Does it come back to council once discussions happen and a plan gets in place? What if council decides, you know what, we don't think it's the right fit there? I'm just trying to get a picture in my mind where we're going with this through you, Madam Chair.
Ms. House.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So the intent of this is, again, to get it on the radar and within the town's official plan review. And where we've noticed in both the transportation discussion papers, the complete communities, is looking at as we grow and build out up to our near 80,000 plus people, where does that make sense? Where does it even a multimodal hub, active transportation, and a lot of the other policies and programs that we're bringing forward, how does that all fit together with the transit hub in the promenade area? So again, this is just to raise the awareness and make sure that it's incorporated in both the regional and the town's plans going forward.
Councillor Gallo.
Okay, I mean, it also doesn't mean that we necessarily agree that this should be the place for it or that we even want it there.
Ms. House.
Through you, Madam Chair, it will be brought forward it was mentioned in both the discussion papers and the direction papers from the official plan, as well as the promenade discussion papers. So as we bring those back to council, I have the opportunity to either add more detail to it or have those as enabling policies in the official plan. That gives us the opportunity to look at that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. And I have the same concern that Councillor Gallo raised. And to be honest with you, I'm not supportive in its current context because I have no definition or idea what substantial transit station / hub means. And the mind can conjure up all kinds of images. I can look to Newmarket and Yonge Street and some of the hubs that they have right down the middle of the street as you get towards Davis and Yonge. And so when I read the report, I was hoping to at least get some sort of definition or some sort of idea what we mean by substantial transit station / hub or stop, or even just some images, because surely somebody must have some sort of thought or concept around that. And before I vote and say, let's explore this idea, at least like to have some sort of general sense of what we're really talking about. What does it really look like? And, conversations I've had previously about this, I use the example that if a developer came to our podium and said, I'm going to build a substantial complex and I'm looking for approvals or to explore this opportunity, we'd all say, well, what do you mean by substantial? What are we talking about here? And I just feel the same way with regards to this. So tonight I'll vote against it. And I guess my hope is perhaps with conversation with Ms. House or with staff, perhaps they can come back between now and council and at least give a sense or some examples of what are they actually talking about trying to look at, just to give me some sort of visual context of what I'm voting for. Ms. House, you're free to comment if you like.
Comment? It was just a comment. Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And some of the same concerns. But ultimately, when I look at and I think of a substantial transit stop or / hub within the promenade, I think about our GO station. I think that's a substantial transit hub. And I think that maybe if we looked at asking the region to continue to consider that the Aurora GO is considered a substantial hub and for them to continue to work on building it as a substantial hub, I think that's maybe the direction that we ask the region to look through their MCR review instead of looking at adding another transit stop / hub. I don't think that I think we're too small of a town to consider having two basically substantial hubs within our town. And so when I look at that and I see the wording, I think, like I said, I think of the GO station, and I think that's an area that I think that we need to concentrate on in creating that transit hub. And I think that that's where we need to push the region to make sure that there's that focus there to make sure that transit hub is the best possible hub for our community and for the region as well.
Thank you, Mayor Maracus. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gartner?
Thank you. When the region was looking at its official plan, I'm not sure, probably early 2000, they wanted to do in Aurora what they've done north in Newmarket. And there was quite a fight, I believe, to keep our downtown, as much of a downtown as we could, to keep the historic feel, and certainly not to have that kind of a transit hub in the area. So I agree with all of the comments that have come before me.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Any other comments or questions? No? Councillor Thompson?
If you would like to speak for the first time, feel free.
Go ahead.
I just, I appreciate the comments from my colleagues around the table, and specifically Mayor Maracus. For him, substantial brings up a vision of a GO station. Others, it may bring up different visions of what that term means. And I think that just reinforces my point. I just want to understand what I'm voting for tonight. I just want to have some sort of framework or sense. And that's why I'm hesitant. I'm not opposed to the concept, but I would like a better or clearer understanding of what I'm voting for tonight.
I was going to step in earlier and ask Ms. House if maybe she could maybe have a few words or clarify a little bit what you feel you're presenting tonight as a major transit hub, and helping council here understand what the objective is here tonight.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So the intent tonight is to seek direction from council in order to have a meaningful conversation with the region on looking out to our 2051 and what our needs may be in the promenade for transit and a transit hub. And what that hub may look like in the future, we don't know right now, but what we would want is that it's on the radar for both the region and the town, to have that reserved in that conversation. Whether it would be mapped in the future, that's to be determined. But right now, what we're asking for is that the council support that we are looking and having those conversations with the region, so it is on the radar before their MCR is finalized.
Thank you, Ms. House. One more question, if I may, just beforehand. You said 2051. So when is the deadline for you to have this conversation to get onto this review you're speaking of?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have to submit comments to the region by the end of March. And again, this is not detailed information about where it would be, what it would look like. It's to have those conversations and make sure that Aurora is not left behind in transit when they're building out their plans for the future.
Great. Thank you very much. Mayor Maracas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the way, and I agree, the way it's worded, I'm not happy with the way it's worded. I think that if what I'm hearing from Ms. House is that if we want staff to have conversations with York Region staff to look at transit possibilities within our promenade area, and for those conversations to take place, and ultimately something would come back to us before the final approval of that York Regional official plan, then maybe if that second one, if everyone's agreeable to it, I think it should be that staff be directed to work with York Region staff to consider transit options within the promenade area, and that's it. And just to direct staff to have conversations about what are the possibilities for transit within our town, within the promenade area. And I think that we can all agree on that. But I agree, it's problematic seeing the word substantial. And especially seeing it on Yonge Street, because I know from my perspective and having the conversations at the region, and Councillor Gardner's fairly correct when she says that there's no intentions of bringing that your buses right down the middle all the way down Yonge Street. That's just not going to happen in the town of Aurora, and we've already had those discussions. So I think that just changing this so that staff are having a conversation about transit possibilities within the promenade, I think that's something that maybe we can all agree on and direct staff to do.
So I'm going to say a friendly amendment might be something that we could perhaps do if we have an agreement here. I don't know if council here would be okay with a friendly amendment. We're good with that? Yeah.
Can we just see it before we vote on it?
We're going to look at it and wait until it's edited. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Kim?
Thank you. To you, Madam Chair, to Ms. House. So just to confirm then, when we are voting here to allow staff to speak with York Region staff, before anything is voted on the MCR by York Region Council, will it come back to Town Council for us to weigh in on whether we support what York Region staff is recommending in a future MCR or other report?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and answer as best I can. The comments are going to be due to the region by the end of the month. We can have those conversations ahead of time. And I guess we work through clerks. I don't know if it'll come back as a formal report. I guess we would seek direction on how we want to bring that back to council before it's finalized by the end of March.
Councillor Kim?
Okay. That's fine.
Thank you very much. If we can get the friendly amendment up. Mayor Maracas, is that you were trying to communicate there? Or were we just trying to change the one wording from major transit stop to just transit and the original?
Yeah, yeah, that looks fine as long as the mover and the seconder are fine with that.
So mover and seconder, who was Councillor Gallo, Councillor Kim? You okay with that? Okay. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Gallo?
I just, if we don't move with this, what's before us now, what happens? York Region's still going to figure out transit in Aurora. They're not going to just completely ignore us. Unless there is something significant like a substantial transit hub, I think that's the purpose of this, that if we want something specific and significant there, otherwise they're going to do what they need to do regardless. So I'll be supporting this because, again, like everyone else, I'm not even sure what that even means. But I think regardless of this, if this goes forward or not, they're still going to do their thing, and they'll complete their official plan, and transit will definitely be part of it.
Thank you, Councillor Gallo. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, so notice of motion. We have one for discussion on March 29th by Councillor Gardner. We have no regional report. So we shall start with new business. Councillor Gallo, let's start with you. No new business. Councillor Thompson.
I just wanted to provide an update to all of council. Today we had JCC, which is our joint council fire committee. And one of the topics that came up was the certification of firefighters. And, there are some concerns with funding and how the process will be managed. And so one of the asks that came out of JCC is that there may be an advocacy role both for the town of Newmarket as well as the town of Aurora. Myself and Councillor Bazance will be talking a little more in depth with Deputy Chief Inglis to get a better sense of, how best to be able to raise the issue. And our discussion at this point would probably be both of us to bring back a similar notice of motion to our respective councils so that we can address some of the concerns that have been raised by AMO as well as through our meeting. And I just wanted to give the other members of council a heads up tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gardner.
I don't have any. I don't have anything tonight.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Kim. Councillor Humphreys. Mayor Maracas. Okay. All right, public service announcements. I'm so sorry. Oh, Councillor Gallo, you wanted to chime in?
Just through you, I guess, to Mr. Downer, I'm not sure who, but the intersection of Yonge Street and Industrial Parkway. I take that route quite often, and it's designed for, large vehicles to be able to, especially going northbound to go east onto Industrial Parkway. There was an accident there the other day, and there's many, many close calls there, just the way that it's designed. Do we have any history on that intersection and whether or not it's actually designed to take the very large vehicles that are supposed to be taking that route and make a right and go east onto Industrial Parkway? I've just seen so many close calls there with and a lot of difficulty with those 18-wheelers to make that turn. So through someone, I'm not sure who, maybe Mr. Downey or someone. If it's not tonight, if someone could just look into it. It just seems like there's a lot of things happening in that intersection.
Thank you. I believe that would be planning. Ms. Howe is probably, but I'm not so sure she'll have the answer tonight on the intersection. Unless Ms. Howe, you have that answer, but maybe you can get back to Councillor Gallo.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we're actually looking also at the Yonge and Wellington corners on traffic and the 18-wheeler turns on that corner. So we'll bring that question back to council with some ideas.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Gallo?
That was it.
Nope. Mayor Maracas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to respond to Councillor Gallo, Councillor Gallo, just to let you know, I've also had conversations with the region in regards to what they can do, Yonge and Wellington, also Wellington and Industrial. They have added some new signage. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the new signage along St. John's and also along Yonge Street, just north of St. John's as well, going south. They've added some new signage to see if that will kind of help out as well as it kind of alleviating where people need to go, especially trying to get them to move away from Yonge and Wellington intersection. So they're seeing how that works out first, and then they're going to look at some other options as well, because they know that those two intersections are problematic when it comes to the 18-wheelers. So absolutely. I'll keep you updated on that.
Thank you, Mayor Maracas. Public service announcements. I'll start over to you. Mayor Maracas, do you have any public service announcements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just So just a couple, as everyone knows, today, March 1st, capacity limits have been lifted in all indoor public settings, and the town of Aurora will no longer require proof of vaccination or be actively screening patrons at our recreation facilities. Mask and physical distancing requirements will still remain in place. And for more details on what's reopening in Aurora, everyone can visit aurora.ca/reopen. March break is almost here. Whether you're ready to take part in person or virtually, the town has you covered with a variety of March break camps. And for more information, everyone can visit aurora.ca/camps. And it's also last call for board member applications for the Aurora Economic Development Corporation. On behalf of council, the AEDC provides strategic leadership and coordination of community economic development. The deadline for applications is Friday, March 4th at 4:30 p.m. And for more information and to apply, if anyone would like to, they can visit aurora.ca/AEDC. It's a great board. Lots of stuff gets done, and I'm sure we're all actively looking for someone that will complement everyone that's sitting on the board today. And then last, nominate someone today, Community Recognition Awards. Councillor Humphreys, I know you're going to get out there actively asking people to put up their names. I do know of one person that I think is well deserving, so I'll be putting their name forward, and I challenge each and every one of you if you could throw in someone's name. We all know people within our community that are well deserving of each and every one of those awards. So I hope that each and every one of us puts someone's name forward for one of those awards. The nominations will be accepted until Friday, April 4th. And for more information, anyone that wants to nominate someone can visit aurora.ca/CRA. And that's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Humphreys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say it was an awesome Black History Month. Lots of celebrations. Thanks to staff for putting on such great events and information. Also to our community partners, the Aurora community, the Aurora Black community, the our own committee and anti-race. I'm sorry, anti-Black, anti-race committee. I'm so sorry for them and all the work that you've done, Councillor Kim, on that, and just all the community efforts. It was great. It was a wonderful celebration, and I heard a tagline, "February and forever," which is really great. Sort of that kind of viewpoint. It's always so. Thank you so much for that great work.
Thank you, Councillor Humphreys. Councillor Kim. Thank you, Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. I'd also like to congratulate the ABC, in particular, Fiona Durant, for doing really an amazing job. I wasn't able to attend the closing ceremony, but it was special, and I'm sure it's all required a lot of work. Also, we won't be sitting next Tuesday. It is International Women's Day, something certainly worth noting. And also the Monday on the 7th, it's Eastern Orthodox Lent. We know how difficult things are in Eastern Europe right now. So I'd like to mark in advance the celebration of Easter.
Thank you, Councillor Gartner. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gallo. Okay, thank you. I just have one, and that's to remind everybody that the Aurora Cultural Center does have their shows now live and in person. So that's very exciting. Please go to their website, auroraculturalcenter.ca. There's a pianist that's March 11th, a theater production March 19th, and a whole myriad of other things in camp. So I encourage you to check that out now that we have the fantastic opportunity to be indoors and enjoying these wonderful programs. Okay, so without further ado, we have no closed session items. So I guess the last thing to do is to adjourn. So if I can have a motion to adjourn, that would be great. Councillor Thompson, second by, give me a hand, Councillor Kim. All those in favor, opposed?